Time now for 3 to Watch when we check out where the big stories will be headed this week.
He'll have the benefit of the Trudeau name, but he'll also have all the political baggage.
Whatever Justin Trudeau puts forward will be turned against him.
She wanted to be heard and she wanted someone to believe her. And nobody did.
Justin Bieber is taking some heat today after a controversial visit to the Anne Frank Museum in Amsterdam.
Anne was a great girl. Hopefully, she would have been a believer.
I'm joined by our 3 panelists. Marnie Supkoff is blogs editor at Huffington Post Canada. David Simmons is a senior communications strategist. John Moore is a talk radio host and op-ed contributor to the National Post. Time for story number 1. The Conservatives have a well-oiled attack machine. As soon as Stéphane Dion was made Liberal leader, they cast him as a hapless geek.
Do you think it's easy to make priorities?
And they kept it up for 20 straight months. Then they cast Michael Ignatieff as a self-serving American elitist.
Not Ignatieff. He didn't come back for you.
Both were destroyed on Election Day, and now it's Trudeau's turn in the crosshairs. So we want to know, can he be destroyed? We're wondering if there would be attack ads. Justin Trudeau was still speaking. It was minutes after he'd been chosen the new Liberal leader. And the statement, as we saw earlier, came out from the Prime Minister saying, congratulations, great job, but, and played up the thing about his dad and that he's not going to be a good manager of the economy like Prime Minister Stephen Harper. What do you think? Wise move, David, or not?
I think that it's not a good idea, if I was in the Prime Minister's office, to give too much oxygen to Justin Trudeau and to Justin's story. This attack ad is far different than Stéphane Dion and Michael Ignatieff's. I think you see him promoting his positives as the Prime Minister, the economy, framing the conversation in a way that almost shuts out Justin Trudeau and the celebrity status. Almost suggests what we saw in America when Obama was nominated. We don't need a celebrity in the White House. We need someone who can run the country. I think you may see a bit of that framing, but the Prime Minister is probably being forced to frame this in a way that's positive for him and negative for Trudeau.
What do you think, John? Wise move or not?
Not a bad move. I mean, it's sort of perfunctory, right? They put out the statement, they gave a positioning. I think Canadians, knowing that there's a majority government and we're not on the brink of an election, the Conservatives used to always behave like we were about to get into one because we had a minority government. Canadians want to give Justin Trudeau time and they want to get to know him. And they kind of feel that the Conservatives have been, you know, putting this blaring message out and not allowing Canadians to figure out who the kid is. And I call him a kid because that's what the Conservatives are going to harp on. But on economic matters, I mean, it's their only card. It's not that good a one. Because Stephen Harper always gets credit for the steady hand on the tiller. The Liberals built the boat.
Marty?
Yeah, well, I think they did have to come out with something, and I do think it's a wise move to do it, but this isn't what I would have done. It comes out sounding a little funny. It's sort of like, congratulations, but let's talk about me, rather than, I think what you need to do is talk about Trudeau, and I think that you've got a lot better case talking about the fact that he hasn't brought any solid policy arguments forward in this entire campaign, rather than just sort of the vagueness of, well, he doesn't have experience and I do. I think you go more on him and less on I'm great on Stephen Harper.
But that's the difference of political communications versus sort of broad communications. You need to push your positives so that people pick you over someone else. Politics is about choices. And if the Prime Minister can say, I'm an adult, I've been running this country for a very long time.
But he also said that Justin Trudeau would ruin the economy.
But that's framing him. Remember, it's the Prime Minister and Thomas Mulcair who just took socialism out of his party's constitution. So if the Prime Minister draws a line in the sand and says, we're not out of the economic recession yet, those have been positives for him. His economic action plan hasn't been working. He's only solidifying what he believes to be the perception that he has in the public.
The attacks were successful to some degree against Dion and Ignatieff. Will they be, or is Justin Trudeau different?
No, I mean, I think Justin can blow up himself. I don't think the Tories can blow him up ahead of schedule. But if you look at Dion and Ignatieff, the thing about them, Bob Ray has said this, they walked into the frame. You know, they actually were pretty well as the Conservatives mapped them out to be. And with Justin Trudeau, I think there's still enough of a question mark. I mean, he hasn't behaved like a child. He hasn't behaved as an entitled person during the campaign. So Canadians are going, okay, well, let's see what he's about.
He also hasn't given us a whole lot. And that's why I'm disappointed in this statement, or disappointed in the sense that I don't think it's a wise way to go. I think that there is something that you can pin on him, which is just that we haven't seen very much.
What about we've got to wrap up in a sec, but what about any backlash for let the guy breathe for a day?
That's not politics. It's not politics, let anyone breathe. And the other piece is this statement actually gives the Prime Minister the room to say, I didn't slam him or paint him with something that's not true. He is young, he is inexperienced.
And no one pooped on his shoulder.
I think Trudeau is, but remember, Trudeau has a temper. We saw him slip up in the House, and he's going to be in that spotlight tomorrow.
One sentence, John, then we've got to move on.
Give him time, who knows?
Thanks so much. Time to move on to story number 2. Rehtaeh Parsons' death shocked the country, but her story is becoming all too familiar. A teen dies after being bullied, abused, ignored. There are tears and candlelight vigils, followed by outrage and backlash.
We were able to locate these boys within 2 hours.
And calls for new legislation.
What we are dealing with in some of these circumstances is simply criminal activity.
We demand something be done, but then it happens all over again. So we were all so heartbroken, but we were last time too. And can this be stopped, John?
I don't know that it can, but I also think people keep saying that times are changing, and when did kids become so vicious or even so sexualized? And I would say that certainly when it comes to the viciousness, kids have always been pretty mean. They just now have technologies and platforms that allow them to share it that much faster. But one thing, and you mentioned it happens again and again, there was the Ottawa City Councillor whose child took their life, and there have been countless cases like this. Why is it you can get 300 people together in Halifax on an evening after a child kills themselves who don't even know this kid but care passionately about them, and yet we can't care about these people when they're actually in trouble?
Well, and there was that last Facebook posting about it wasn't the enemies that did me in, it was my friends. It was the silence of my friends. Like, we do keep talking about it, but nothing changes. Can something be changed, David?
I think we have to have a really meaningful public conversation. The Prime Minister, I don't agree with a lot of the things he says, but when he stood up there and said this isn't bullying, in some cases this is criminal activity, he was right. And I think as Canadians, teachers, medical professionals, parents, we have to start calling a spade a spade. This isn't bullying. This isn't schoolyard teasing. This is malicious.
So what do you do? You're talking about some kind of campaign?
Absolutely. I mean, we all remember those campaigns when Canada was growing. Block parents, don't go into the stranger's car. How to dial 911. Those were public campaigns that help young people be aware about vulnerabilities in society. We have to have one about technology and the impact it has to spread violence and to spread hate. It's just not okay, and we should.
But we've had all of these bullying
it.
campaigns. You're talking about something different?
This isn't bullying. I was part of a conference here in Toronto where we brought together leaders from across the country to talk about LGBT suicide, and there was a lot of discussion about the fact that that wasn't bullying. That was a whole level of hate that needed to be addressed, and people took notice. This is not bullying. This is vicious, and I think we minimize it by treating it as such.
We've talked so much all this week about vigilantism and about, did the police handle it properly? Did the justice system handle it properly? What were those girls and all of these stories doing, drinking so much? But I'm wondering, what is it with boys? If it is true that there were 4 boys who got involved with a drunk girl, what's wrong with boys? I sound like I'm 1,000 years old, but what's happening? Any idea, Marty?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish I knew exactly, but I think part of the problem is just that there's a much more casual attitude, I think, towards sex, and I think kids are sexualized so much younger. I agree with John that the vicious, the kind of cruel, vicious part is not new, but I do think the sexualization is new, and I think this casual attitude towards it is new. I think in previous generations, while certainly bad stuff would happen, I think there was also a feeling that boys and young men would be embarrassed to share something like this. This isn't something that if they had done it, that they would be sharing it through Facebook. So what is it, David?
What's different?
I think there's always been an expectation or fortunate or unfortunate where guys would get around and talk about their conquest in a very misogynistic way. What's changed now is that before I'd say, me and person X went here and you'd have my word for it and we'd laugh about it inappropriately. Now there's the challenge of, okay, well, use your smartphone and take a photo of it, or use your smartphone and prove it. And there's nothing stopping me or stopping young people, because we're not having these conversations that I think are so important, from taking that very inappropriate step and feeling the pressure to demonstrate some sort of superiority by having the ability to do that.
That's a good point, John.
Yeah, I just think that, the aspect of bullying that we talk about so much, we always ask parents to talk to their kids about being victims. Nobody ever imagines that their kid might be the bully. And that's a major part of the conversation that we always ignore. You know, all the kids wear pink to school day and they say bullying is bad, but there are bullies amongst them. And I think that's the conversation a lot of parents probably also need to have, is that their worst nightmare could be that their kid's the problem.
Well, a few conversations. It's sad that we have to keep talking about them. Time to move on to story number 3.
Justin Bieber, criminal investigation now.
In the past few weeks, Justin Bieber's image has gone from golden boy to bad boy. Driving his Ferrari too fast, going shirtless through an airport, going ballistic on the paparazzi.
What'd you say?
Now this. During a visit to the Anne Frank Museum in Amsterdam, Bieber wrote in the guest book, "Anne was a great girl. Hopefully, she would have been a belieber." What do you think, Marty? Too much or?
Not exactly appropriate, but I do think that it's not the worst thing he could have said. I think that I've seen a lot of reaction to it where people are just going crazy and freaking out. It's not classy, but I mean, he does sort of touch on a point. Anne Frank was a normal teenager, and she did, in extraordinary circumstances, but she did have movie star posters on her wall. I mean, there's a possibility that she might have been a believer. Was this a wise thing to write? Absolutely not. But I think he's actually done some worse things in the past few weeks.
John?
Yeah, I just think it shows such breathtaking egomania. It's absolutely astonishing. And writing, I mean, even the first part of it, Anne Frank was quite a girl. I mean, you know, that Rosa Parks, what a broad she was. I mean, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And I used to think this was part of Justin's sort of pivoting from a boy star to tough guy, but now he's just dumb.
Is this, please tell me, David, that this isn't something that a PR person would have come up with? I mean, we've seen a few stunts of turning him from a bad boy into a sexy guy. Yeah. This wouldn't have been thought out, would it?
Maybe a really bad one. Maybe a really bad strategist. I think that at certain points we have to tell people who are growing up in the media that they've done something wrong and tell them no, and it's time to do that with Justin Bieber. I think we're giving him too much credit and attention by even sort of paying attention to him like he is off in his own world, and I'm waiting for the scandal to break. The other shoe's going to drop, and unfortunately we're going to see, maybe we'll see him sort of flame out. But I actually think I'm offended by it. I don't give, Marnie's, I think, made a good point that she was a young woman, but this is a historical figure. There's a lot of reality around Anne's story that I don't think Justin's being very respectful to, and I'm insulted by it.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Part of why her story is so compelling, I'm not saying this went through his mind, but part of the reason her diaries are so compelling is because they are so human, and they are, so much of them are just normal teenage things that she's writing about despite the awfulness around her. So
let's
in a
hope
certain
that's
way,
what he was thinking.
let's hope so. Let's think the best.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.